Today's lesson will be looking at chemistry. We are looking at lesson 102 of the Chatelier'S Principle. Let us start. Now, looking at the official Chatelier'S Principle, it says when the equilibrium in a closed system is disturbed, the system will reinstate a new equilibrium by favoring the reaction that will oppose the disturbance. Now, in lesson 101, we were using the terms the fourth reaction or reverse reaction will be favored to explain those three factors that affects the chemical equilibrium. So today we are going to add, we are going to explain those factors using different terms or different approach, especially when it comes to answering the question of what happens if we add the concentration, we remove the concentration, or we increase, decrease temperature, we increase, decrease the volume, which will affect the pressure. For the sake of explaining, let us use this equation to answer few questions so that we can be familiar with the way we should answer these questions. Normally, the question would be structured in this manner. How will each of the following changes affect the amount of NO in gas phase at equilibrium? So we can see that NO is actually the product. So we want to know how will this be affected if we do the following changes. The first change, N2 gas is added. So what happens if we increase this? Remember that once we increase this, it means that we are dealing with concentration as our factor in this case. Now we know that if we increase one of the reactants, the system will try to reinstate and reach a new equilibrium by favoring the forward reaction. So in this case, how will this change affect the amount of this? So normally the question would give you options to say, will it increase, decrease, or remains the same? So we want to know whether this will increase, decrease, or will remain the same if we add more of this. Now, since we are adding more of our reactants, the system will try to reinstate by decreasing the added substance by increasing our product. So in this case, the change, we increased this. Now, in order for a new equilibrium to be established, that added substance must be decreased, and then at the same time we increase the NO, which is our product. So our answer here will be, it will increase. So for the second question, what changes will affect the amount of NO gas if we increase the pressure? Now remember that when it comes to pressure, we have to analyze the equation. We can see that we have 2 moles of NO on the right hand side, and we have 1 nitrogen and 1 oxygen. So the sum of the two have 2 moles this side, we also have 2 moles this side. So there's no reaction that will be favored in this case. It means that it will remain the same. Since there's no reaction that will be favored, there is no substance which will be decreased or increased in order to balance with the other side or the other substance. So it will remain the same in this case. I hope you can see this. Let us go ahead and try to look at our second example in order for you to understand how we answer these questions. It's very important that you watch the first lesson of the Chatelier'S Principle in order to be able to understand how to answer these questions, because now we are just looking at the manner of which we should answer the questions. We are not looking at the explanation of this Chatelier'S principle. So we know that once we see this, it means the fourth reaction is exothermic reaction and the reverse reaction is endothermic reaction. As you can see that the change in enthalpy is less than 0. It means that this will be exo and then it will be endo. Then looking at the sum of the coefficients, you can see that we have 1, 1, then we have 1. So on the left hand side we have 2 mole, on the right hand side we have 1 mole. So the first question, the question says, how will each of the following changes affect the number of moles of H2S? We are talking about the product. At equilibrium, we should choose from increases, decreases, or remains the same. Now the first change, we add more of this. You should understand something. Basically, the Chatelier'S principle is based on compression and stressing the gases. In this case, we can see that sulfur is in a solid phase. Now you should know that whenever we add a solid phased substance, the number of moles of our product will not be tempered. So in this case, our answer is it will remain the same. This is applicable to all the addition of solid phased substances. The second question, temperature is increased. Now we know that whenever we increase temperature, endothermic reaction it's always favored. So in this case, you can see that the endothermic reaction is the reverse reaction. So if the reverse reaction is endothermic reaction, it means that the reverse reaction is favored. But remember that the question is not based on which reaction is favored. It says, how will the number of moles of this be affected if we increase the temperature? We should understand something. This also explains our previous example. Since this reaction, the reverse reaction, is the one that is favored, it simply means that the side where the arrow is actually moving towards will be increased. The side whereby the arrow is moving away from is decreased. So in this case, since the arrow is moving from the H2S to the reactant side, in this case, it means that this will be decreased and then this will be increased. So in this case, it decreases. That is the answer. The number of moles of this will decrease. I hope you can see this. Let us look at another example quickly. Or we can simply add another question here. What will happen to the number of moles of H2S if we decrease pressure? Now we know that when we decrease pressure, the reaction or the equilibrium will favor the side with the largest moles. In this case, we can see that we have 2 moles and then we have 1 mole here. So in this case, we can see that the answer will be the same as decrease, because when you decrease the pressure, it will favor the reverse reaction. So in this case, it's decrease. Now what happens to the number of moles of H2S if we add more of hydrogen? Now remember that when we add on the reactant side, fourth reaction will be favored, meaning that we are going to have a decrease in an increase of this. So more moles of this will increase. So basically this is how we answer these questions, especially when we are answering questions from past question papers that are created by the Department of Education. The formal examination, whereby official question papers are used. This is the acceptable way to answer these questions. And the question, if it doesn't ask about which reaction is favored, then we'll have to use increase, decrease, or remains the same. In most cases, we use these terms or we use this manner to answer the questions. So this lesson video is meant to link lesson 101 and lesson 102 of the Chatelier'S Principle. Lesson 101, it explains the basics, it explains the factors, but using the terms forward, reverse reaction is favored. So this one, we use increase, decrease, or remains the same, which is basically the way it is usually asked in the official question papers. Now that's it for this lesson video. This is Wakuda SJ. Thank you very much.